5 and 6, me, Mr. A, back with Tom's Midnight Garden, story time, chapter 9, Hattie. Tom only rarely saw the three boys in the garden. They would come strolling out with the air gun, or for fruit. They came for apples on the second occasion of Tom seeing them, which was only a few days after the first. With a terrier at their heels, they sauntered out of the house and, apparently aimlessly, took the path by the greenhouse, and so came into the kitchen garden. Then, suddenly, they bunched together and closed upon a young tree of early ripening apples. "We were only told not to pick any," said Hubert. "Come on, lads, shake the tree and make them fall." He and James set their hands on the tree trunk and shook it to and fro. An apple dropped, and then several more. Edgar was gathering them up from the ground when he paused, looked sharply across to the bushes and cried, "Spying!" There stood the child, Hattie. She came out into the open then, as concealment had become pointless. "Give me an apple, please," she said. "Or you'll tell, I suppose," cried Edgar. "Spy and telltale." "Oh, give her an apple, she means no harm," said James. As Edgar seemed unwilling, he himself threw one to her, and she caught it in the bottom of her pinafore held out in front of her. "Only don't leave the core on the lawn, Hattie, as you did last time, or you'll get yourself into trouble, and us too, perhaps." She promised, and eating her apple drew nearer to the group. Each boy had an apple now, and they were eating them hurriedly, scuffling the earth with their feet as they came away from the tree to confuse the tracks they had made. Now they halted again, and it happened to be quite near Tom, but with their backs to him, while they finished their apples. The terrier snuffed his way round their legs and so came to Tom's side of the group. He was closer to Tom than he ever had been before, and became, in some degree, aware of him. So much was clear from the dog's behaviour. He faced Tom, his hackles rose, he growled again and again. Hubert said, "What is it, Pincher?" and turned. He looked at Tom, but never saw him. Edgar had turned quickly at the same time. He looked more searchingly through and through Tom. Then James turned, and lastly even Hattie. They all four stared and stared through Tom, while the dog at their feet continued his growling. It was very rude of them, Tom felt, and very stupid too. Suddenly he lost patience with the lot of them. He felt the impulse to be rude back, and gave way to it. After all, no one could see him. He stuck out his tongue at them. In retort, the girl Hattie darted out her tongue at Tom. For a moment Tom was so astounded that he almost believed he had imagined it, but he knew he had not. The girl had stuck out her tongue at him. She could see him. "What did you stuck your tongue out for, Hattie?" asked Edgar, who must be able to see things even out the corners of his eyes. "My tongue was hot in my mouth," said Hattie, with a resourcefulness that took Tom by surprise. "It wanted to be cool. It wanted fresh air." "Don't give pert, lying answers." "Oh, let her be, Edgar," said James. They lost interest in the dog's curious behaviour, and in Hattie's. They began to move back to the house. The dog skulked along nervously beside them, keeping them between himself and Tom, and still muttering to himself deep in his throat. The girl walked slightly ahead of them all. Tom followed, seething with excitement, waiting his chance. They went in single file by the narrow path between the greenhouse and the large box bush. Hattie went first and then the three boys. Tom followed behind the four of them, but when he emerged from the path and came onto the lawn, there were only the three boys ahead of him. "Where's Hattie?" James was asking. He had been the last of the three. "Slipped off somewhere among the trees," said Edgar carelessly. The three boys continued upon their way back into the house. Tom was left on the lawn, gazing about him in determination and anger. She thought she had slipped through his fingers, but she hadn't. He would find her. He would have this out with her. He began his search. He looked everywhere that he could think of, among the bushes, up the trees, behind the heating house, beyond the nut stubs, under the summer-house arches, inside the gooseberry wire, beyond the bean poles. No, she was nowhere. At last, behind him, he heard her call, "Cooey!" She was standing there, only a few yards from him, staring at him. There was a silence, and then Tom, not knowing whether he was indeed speaking to ears that could hear him, said, "I knew you were hiding from me and watching me, just now." She might have meant to pretend not to hear him, as earlier she must have pretended not to see him, but her vanity could not resist this opening. "Just now?" she cried scornfully. "Why, I've hidden and watched you often and often before this." I saw you when you ran along by the nut stubs and then used my secret hedge tunnel into the meadow. I saw you when Susan was dusting and you waved from the top of the yew tree. I saw you when you went right through the orchard door." She hesitated, as though the memory upset her a little, but then went on. "Oh, I've seen you often, and often, when you never even knew it." So that was the meaning of the footprints on the grass, on that first day. That was the meaning of the shadowy form and the face at the back of the bedroom, across the lawn. That, in short, was the meaning of the queer feeling of being watched, which Tom had had in the garden so often that in the end he had come to accept it without speculation. A kind of respect for the girl crept into Tom's mind. "You don't hide badly for a girl," he said. He saw at once that the remark angered her, so he hurried on to introduce himself. "I'm Tom Long," he said. She said nothing, but looked as if she had a little of opinion of that name as a name. "Well," said Tom, nettled, "I know your name. Hattie something." Into the saying he threw a careless disdain. It was only tit for tat. The little girl, with only the slightest hesitation, drew herself up into a stiffness and said, "Princess Hattie, if you please. I am a princess." All right, that's the end of chapter 9. Ooh, someone can see him. Right, so we'll get on with chapter 10 tomorrow, and I'll see you then. So take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.